There are two types of rendering engines. Well, what is a rendering engine? Basically, whatever you see on computer is getting rendered. Even in Maya scene, what you see here, so I select this statue, I just rotate around. I have an illusion of three-dimensionality, but the reality is it is getting rendered. And when you go to the display, heads-up display in frame rate, you will see that there's a frame rate for your Maya viewport. What does it mean? It means that it gets rendered. So basically, whatever you see in 3D is like a game. At the end, what the result will be an image. But because this image is getting streamed to you in milliseconds, very quick, very fast, you get an illusion of that you are navigating through that space. So basically, when I press the mouse and I just do that, I'm rendering this scene like 15 frames per second, and I get a feedback like 30 frames per second, 100 frames per second, based on the data that it says. It's basically like all other games. Games, you think that you are playing the games, but it's a cinematic movie that it gets rendered on the fly, like 50 times every second. That's why if your computer, your graphic card is not strong enough, your game will lag. Well, basically lag means that it cannot render enough images per second. So the computer now uses GPU. Let me add a plane under our smiling Buddha. And so what I see now here is not, well, it looks fine, especially when you turn on, like, let's say, screen space ambient occlusion, which gives a nice view. It looks fine, but it's not a proper rendering at the end. So what is it then? So you see that there's there's a lot of like jagginess around hands. There's no shadow properly. So if I press 7 on my keyboard, everywhere is dark. I press Alt B as well a couple of times. So even I changed the Alt B is for different options in the background. So I go just like absolute darkness. And then in the rendering menu, I add a directional light. Okay, so that's that directional light. Just rotate around, just scale it up. The scaling doesn't matter, but the direction matters. There's no shadow because I have to turn this shadow on here. So the shadow is on as well. But still the result looks very rough. So basically the GPU, the graphic processing unit, your computer has different parts, different hardwares on it. So let me show you. Motherboard, GPU, CPU. So when you look at your computer, in the heart of your computer, you see like, let's say, there is a CPU right underneath this this fan. There is where you put the CPU on it. And there is a GPU. These are the fastest, most complicated chipsets on your computer. CPU is responsible for numerical calculations, and GPU does numerical calculations plus a lot of geometric calculations. So GPU is enhanced to do visual and geometric calculations. That's why it is used. It is the unit, graphic unit, processing unit in your computer that is responsible for generating images. So it generates image on the fly to give you an interactive environment, but this is not what your client wants, or this is not what you are happy with. So if the client, so the image that you want to show the client, you say, wait, let the computer does some calculation, because the light from this directional light has bounced just once and the image has been generated. But you say, okay, let's have the light bounce a couple of times and I show you a better image. So that's why you go and you apply a bunch of algorithms and scripts. Basically, a rendering engine is basically a bunch of algorithms that calculate the number of light rays that bounces in your scene, and then it generates the image. So it does all those calculations. And so some people write those scripts and they put fancy names on that. So someone call it mental ray, someone call it, I don't know, Arnold or Redshift or whatever. These are just like basically different algorithms to calculate how light behaves in your 3D scene and how the image has to be generated. So Arnold used to be a plugin for Maya, and at some point Autodesk has bought and embedded into Maya. Arnold is a CPU-based renderer. It means that it uses the processing power of your CPU and generates the image. So when I go to my rendering setting and I say, okay, it's gonna be Arnold, and then I press the rendering button. So of course this is a much better image compared to that one in terms of like details and the lighting. So let me get closer. Oh, by the way, a very good habit is to add a camera right in the beginning. So I go to the rendering menu and add a camera, and then I go to the panels, perspective, and camera. I look through the camera, rotate around my object. I usually like to turn on this resolution gate. So I know that this is my camera. I just got closer to the Buddha. So this is my camera. You see how I change my camera. I'm an oldie and I use Maya hotkeys quite a lot. So that's by pressing spacebar, you see hotkeys appear where your mouse cursor is. So I just press hotkey, click on this middle Maya text, and I just drag up and perspective. So you see when you sometimes I just do it very quickly. You can see. So I just do this. So I just go per side, top, or front using that hotkeys. So now I have my camera here. You know that the size of the camera doesn't matter. So I just make it larger for the visibility. I have my camera here and I have my scene here. So whenever I want to see, so this is what I do usually. I go to the camera view and I go to the panel. So that's why what you can do now. But I can't because I am using one single monitor for recording. So I have to stick with one single monitor. But you can go and look through your camera, and then on panel, just tear off a copy of your camera. It gives you a new copy. Just move it to the new scene. And then here, just go to perspective. So you have your camera view and you have your perspective view. So that's a good way for especially when you want to move the lights around, try different, just have your camera somewhere and then your lighting setup somewhere else. So, but I just stick with this one single camera setup. Okay, let's have a look. So this is a GPU-based rendering. And when I render it, let me render it one more time. So you see that the CPU-based renderer is much nicer. But the rendering engine here is Maya viewport. So you see that there is a menu that says renderer. What does it mean? It means a GPU-based renderer that gives you a quick result that you would be able to live inside Maya environment. But there are other, so I'm going to show you a list. So there are a couple of different CPU-based rendering engines like Mentor Ray, the Maya legacy renderer, like Arnold, like Maxwell, and a bunch of other rendering engines. There are a ton of different rendering engines, but some of them are industry proven. Some of them are production proven. They have been used quite often in different productions, like Arnold. And Rembrandt is the one that Pixar uses. It's a very good rendering engine. It's a bit complex to use. GPU-based rendering engines, but the story is GPU technology has been getting advanced. It's progressing very fast, much faster than the advancement we see in CPU. That's why GPUs these days are a lot faster than CPUs. They do a lot more calculations at a time compared to a CPU. That's why at some point, like 3-4 years ago, a bunch of developers said, why not use GPU as a main geometric calculator to generate the rendering engines, the rendering results. So like game engines, this is the future. So at future, all the software these days, we're still at the beginning of this journey. All the softwares that you use are very dumb. So they cannot show you the light as it should be, like nature. So we don't render our environment. Or when you play games, you don't render your games. It's as it is. It's real time. If there's a tree over there, is what you see is what you get. So this is the idea. So hopefully in future we have game engines integrated into 3D software. So you put a light and what you see is that's it. That's the final render. But for now we have a bunch of GPU-based rendering engines that they use GPU for rendering, like Redshift, or Octane, or Keyshot, or Otoy, or a bunch of other GPU-based rendering. The one that is getting used very much is Redshift. It's the only production, the one that production houses uses that. For now, as far as I know, is Redshift. There's a good news coming this year, hopefully. Rembrandt is developing something called XPU, as they say. It's basically both CPU and GPU calculation together. So that's Rembrandt 22. Rembrandt at the moment is 21.7. Rembrandt 22, as they say, will have an XPU, and everything that they have shown in different events and exhibitions is so cool. It just uses CPU and GPU all together to generate your final result, which is super cool. And you know that Rembrandt is free for students and is very cheap even for production houses. So that's the story of GPU or CPU based rendering. So when I say we are going to use Redshift, so you see that I switch from Arnold to Redshift, and then I start rendering my scene with Redshift. It means that I am using GPU now for rendering. I'm gonna have this here. I'm using a GPU for rendering. So the result might not look, but it's basically pretty much the same. But we are moving to generate a much nicer image at the end. So, okay, so let's move on. In the rendering setting, I just selected Redshift. Just zoom back a bit. Okay, I'm gonna delete this light so everywhere gets dark. So I press 6, so I go back to like default lighting mode. So the lighting setup, so the first thing that I would do is I just want to make a very basic lighting setup. Okay, the rule of thumb in every rendering engine is to use the so there's a bunch of materials and lights that is like can be used by any rendering engines, like Blin or Lambert or Fong. These are the name of people who developed those shading languages. So like 50, 60 years ago, and so they're still in use. Or the lights that Maya provides you, they are like, well, it doesn't matter if you're rendering with Arnold or Redshift or anything else, mental ray, they all can be used. But if you use the dedicated shader or light that the rendering engine provides, it means that you are playing in the game that the rendering engine is building. You are using the same tools that they are providing. So theoretically, it will help the rendering speed and quality at the same time. That's why, as this is a Redshift material, this is a Redshift rendering engine that we're going to use. I go to Hypershade and I click on Redshift shaders, and then so here you see that Redshift shaders, and I click on surface. So there's like a bunch of shaders, like Redshift hair, which is obviously is a hair shader. Redshift car paint, as it says, self-explanatory. Or shadow catcher, which is for visual effects purposes. It's a replacement for use background that you use for in other renderers. Or Redshift skin, which is for waxy materials and human skin. We're using it today, and so the most commonly used material is Redshift material. That's a multi-purpose material that you can generate most of the materials with it. Yeah, just drag, middle click and drag and drop it to your Hypershade, and then from your Hypershade you can middle click again, drag and drop it on your object. So, and name your materials. It's a good habit to name your materials. I select this RS material, and I can Control A and just type this is, or you can just like anywhere, just type this is Buddha material, and I add an RS at the end, which means it is Redshift. It's good to know because sometimes you use like a variety of different materials, so it's good to know which one is Redshift. You just like can tag it at the end. Yes, so the material is assigned. So you know that Redshift materials are shiny by default. So the reflection is on. So if I add a Redshift light, dome light, which is the first light that we add, and render it, you will see that it's, so so how I render it, I don't click on any of these one, I just click on the one on the icon that has eye on it, because it brings the rendering window to my view, and then I right click here and I say camera. So the material is a bit shiny, so that's why I just like, I select the statue, go to the material, and in the reflection I make the weight 0, and weight 0, yeah, that's it, and I render it again. Okay, I can click on that. But you know, just throwing a dome light and rendering is not the right way of lighting. So an easy way of lighting an object, especially for visual effects, is using HDR. What is an HDR? HDR is basically an HDR is basically let me show you HDR chrome bulb. So you take a chrome bulb to your shooting scene, and then you take the photo of that chrome bulb a couple of times. So basically you do a photo bracketing. Photo bracketing is like, so this is the right exposure. Like you adjust the camera takes, so you have to either take a chrome bulb or a very wide lens. So the camera takes 1, 2 or 3 underexposure and 2 or 3 overexposure. So like 2 stop underexposed, 4 stop underexposed, 6 stop underexposed, 2 stop overexposed, 4 stop overexposed. And then you use a soft, so what does it mean? It means a lot of lighting data from the scene. So what you have to do is then you use a software like HDR Shop. You know all these, I just like review. HDR Shop, which is a paid software, or the one that we use at AUT, we use a Luminance HDR, which is a free app, and it works very fine. It works very good, basically. So you use and you combine all those images together, all those images of the chrome bulb, and then you unwrap it. So these images that you see as HDR images, they are unwrapped chrome bulb, and we call them lat long when they are getting unwrapped. So let me just download an HDR. So let's assume that we have recorded. So you have done some HDR recording, picture taking photo of HDR images for your classes. But let's assume that I'm gonna download some from HDR. So let's say download HDR. So these one HDR Labs. They provide lots of very cool HDR images. So let's say this. So either you are in a closed space or open space, you can use them for lighting. So let's say I'm gonna this Walk of Fame. I just want to download that one. Just download your HDR file. Oh, I should have made a project for my file. I am fired now if I was working in a. So I go and make a file project window inside. Well, that's so make new, maybe on network on my desktop. I just leave it as it is. In Maya projects, I make a new project, lighting. The project that I am making is lighting tutorial. Accept it, and then I go again, file and set project, and set it inside that lighting tutorial, and then set it, and then I save my project. Make sure you save your project inside the scenes folder. So it's basically I'm just saving, no, not too much complication. Just saving it, but saving in a right way, because if you work in a project file structure, you have everything in one place. You have textures and cache data and simulation data and your scene files in one place. So if you move your files around, they don't get affected by the local address. So I save that as lighting tutorial I never learned to pronounce that word right. Tutorial. Okay, so lighting tutorial. It's saved. Okay, just what I wanted to do. I just wanted to. I downloaded a HDR. Let's open the downloaded file. Yep, that one. And I move it to the project folder. So the project folder is in my documents. As you saw, I made a project in Maya, projects, lighting tutorial, and source images. I just drag and drop this downloaded HDR, unzip it there, basically. Yes, and then you can select your light, the dome light that you have added, and it has a so before that I just want to get no, I don't let me see it first, and then I get rid of that background. So in the dome light attribute editor, so if you don't see your attribute editor, just press Ctrl A. There's a dome map. Just you go to your source images where you have copied your HDR map, and just get into the HDR that you downloaded. So the one that we don't. So there's a bunch of different files here, but the one that we want is the largest one with HDR extension. So that's the one that we want. One of them is preview, the other one is our other stuff. So HDR. So you will see that I'm gonna render it now with the HDR lighting. So basically the lighting from that scene is used. So you see that it has like a lot of details and lighting set up from the environment. It would be nice if this plate underneath Buddha statue would be able to capture the shadow, just the shadow, and be invisible. So it will be used as a shadow catcher. So we have a material for that. So you have to just go to the attribute editor again. I just clean here. I add Redshift matte shadow catcher, that one. Middle click to this working area, and again middle click, drag and drop it to the ground. Let's call the shader as shadow catcher material RS, which means Redshift. Okay, let's render it again. Okay, the reason that we still see the background is it's not a background, it's a dome light. But the shadow catcher works fine because when I go to alpha channel, you will see that the alpha channel is there. It basically has generated that. What I do, I just turn off the visibility of light as well, and then we can combine the statue with some images. So I select my lights and go to the environment and turn off the background. Okay, so we don't see the background anymore. So how to adjust the direction of the light when we are using HDR? So basically, you just have to rotate your light. What I do now, let me press escape. Stop, you idiot. Okay, so I use IPR now. What is IPR lighting? IPR is rendering. IPR is a interactive photorealistic render. But don't be fooled with IPR. Sometimes when you use like complex materials or complex lighting, IPR might not show you the very final results. It's just a quick rendering. So just select your light and just rotate it. You see that IPR interactively responds. So you see that, yeah, that's a nice light. So you see that the direction of the light rotates around your subject based on that image. Basically, the image that we downloaded into our project. Yeah, so this is what is getting used for lighting, and this is the image of the icon. So you see that the light comes from that side and it gets casted on the subject. So yeah, so it's an easy way of lighting if you are supposed to do your lighting based on an actual lighting setup. So when we are going to a project, a filming set, and we are told that, okay, now add a dinosaur to this scene, it means that that dinosaur has to get lit, has to borrow, has to be influenced by all the lights that is in the set, is inside that shooting set. I'm going to show you an important responsibility of a visual effects supervisor. The person who is in every filming session and is doing the lights, is doing the light sampling, which is basically HDR light photography, is measuring the distances, is make sure that there are enough tracking points. But I am going I'm going to disconnect that dome light for now. I'm going to okay. Yeah. So yeah, I have deleted the what was that? The HDR for now, and also I have assigned a Lambert because I'm going to talk about 3-point lighting. What is 3-point lighting? So this is a way of lighting that always looks cool, looks nice. So you use 3 types of lights. So the lights that we use are the concept. These are not technical terms. These are conceptual terms. So we use a field light, which is any sort of soft light. I insist on it, on the word soft, that just like fills in the scene with a specific amount of light. So if your scene is dark, so you use a little amount of field light. And you use key light. Well, basically your main light is key light. That's the light that defines the logic of the scene, the directionality of the scene. So if the window is over there, so the key light has to be aligned with the window. And a rim light or backlight. People like to call it backlight. I like to call it rim light, as I am a person who is coming from filming industry. So rim light is basically a rim of light around somebody. So like, so a field light has filled in the scene. A key light is determining the directionality of the light, is the main light. But there's like a subtle distinguish, there's a subtle line of light around the character that makes the character stand out, separates the character from the background. So we start always with the key light. So I delete this dome light. So I just add I press 7 again, so everywhere is dark. I go to the Redshift lights and add a Redshift physical light. Instead of this weird name, like RS physical blah blah, I just double click and I say this is our key light. So the key light is the light that determines the directionality of the light. So you can move it around. You see that? So it's an area light. So what is an area light? A window kind of light. You can change the type of your light from area to point, which is an omnidirectional light, to a spot, which is like a study lamp. So a spotlight, or a directional light, which is pretty much like Maya's directional light. But the most commonly used light is area light. So a very good way of lighting is look through the light. So just add your light and then go to the panel and then look through your light, and then you just see how your subject should be lit. So this is, I'm looking at through perspective camera, but you have to keep an eye always from the camera. Okay, I'm going to rotate it in a way until I get a very nice. So I'm going to tear off a. Okay, and then I'm going to look through my lights. You see that I rotate the light and everything changes. So this is what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a very nice triangle on my character's cheek. So what is that? It's, so if you just Rembrandt Lighting. So if you look at Rembrandt's paintings, so he positions the light in his paintings in a way that it creates that very beautiful triangle on one cheek. So the Rembrandt, the same style of lighting is you position the light direction in a way that creates that triangle. So basically that's what I did. I just positioned the key light in that direction. So that's nice. That's a nice key light. I just want it to be slightly warm. So make it a bit orangish, warm. Yes, like that. Okay, I'm happy with that. What should I do next? I turn it off. So that's what you do in different scenes. So when I turn it off, it doesn't respond in viewport because the renderer doesn't respond that. But it's a good way is you just do that through IPR. So just turn on the IPR. So when you turn on and off your lights, you will see the result in IPR. So in a filming set, the lighting people, you see that everywhere is dark because I have turned out off. So on. Oh, that's too much. That's why you should not trust viewport. So I go lower down the intensity to 10. Even 10 is too much. Maybe 5. Yeah, 5 is fine. Yeah. No. Yeah, 3. 3 not bad. Okay. So in filming sets, you lower down, so you turn off and on different lights. So you set up the key light, you turn it off. You set up the field light, you turn it off. So why? Because you want to just see the light that you are working with. So I turn that off, so everywhere gets black. And then I move on to add, okay, that's cool. So now I add a field light. A field light usually is a dome light. So I go and add a redshift light and a dome light. So it just makes everywhere bright. But that's not the level of the light that I want. So it's too bright. First of all, and then I just want the light to be like skylight, a bit purplish. So let me show you. No. Skylight. So you see that the skylight has like a kind of like a somewhere between blue and purple, a very faint, tint in it, which makes it really pleasant to look at. So that's why I just go and change it to like that kind of like color. And it is like too bright now. I just, oh, where did you go? Okay. Is it on? Yes. Why it's not working? Okay, let's do it again. Yeah, it's too much, I believe. Just make it like more subtle, and then I make it darker, so you can bring down the tint. If you don't want to see the background, just go to the environment and turn it off. Every individual light that you add has a visibility as well. So if it is an area light, go to the area and just turn off the visibility. So it is still too much, so I lower that down. So, and then I turn it off. Okay, this is not. This looks like a nice. That projector is very dark. Anyway, I just turned it off for now, and then I add another physical light. I go here, redshift lights. Redshift physical light, and I'm going to use that as so the dome light, I rename it as field light. The redshift light, I rename it as the new physical light that I added. I'm gonna use it as a rim light, and rim light comes from back, so that's why it's called backlight as well. So I just look through the light. I move to the back of, what happened? Just move to the back of the statue and look from the back and top. If you just look through the, let me bring in the not that one. Where are you? Yeah, you see that? I am trying to create a rim of light around the statue. So I go back to perspective. basically I go make it stronger first of all. So area light, when you change the size of the area light, it gets stronger as well. So the size has influences on the strength. I go look through the selected. I just look down a bit. Yeah, maybe more. Yeah, you see that there's like a nice distinguishing rim of light around your character. So I don't want this light to cast shadow. I just want this light to cast light. So this shadow is not a good shadow that I want. So you can turn off the shadow of this light. And you can turn off the visibility of this light as well. And you can make it like very faint. Or maybe I keep the shadow on, but the light would be like not very faint, well, basically strong. I'm sure that the fill light will phase this out. So it's time to turn all the lights together and see how they work together. So I select the key light, turn it on. So this is the key light with the rim light added. And select the fill light, turn it on. So this is all the lights together. So yeah, it's a nice lighting setup now. So we have like the statue is separated from the background. We have a directionality of the light, and there's like a fill light that we see like all the details and yet not distracting. Okay, so that's a 3-point lighting, and you can play around with the material that you have assigned to your statue. So I go to the perspective here, and the material here is, you can play around with, like, let's say reflectivity. So you see that when the reflectivity is up, it becomes shiny, like a very reflective material. You can adjust the roughness of your shiny statue. You can say that this is you can set the edge IOR. It would be shiny, and the IOR, or index of reflection, to something like a metal. So then start play around with that and making it look like a metal. So let me just play around with the roughness. Yeah, metal. Yeah, and maybe I make it look like a brass. And reflectivity kind of same color, or maybe gold. Why not? Let's go yellow, and that one yellow as well. Yeah, now it's like a golden statue now. Or I just want to play with the roughness. It's like very it's like a very dirty golden statue because it's not reflective. So I just clean it up, and it's shiny now. Very shiny golden statue, quickly in few seconds. So it's, yeah, the Redshift is very responsive, very fast when you play with the different attributes. So you can make it refraction. If, like, let's make it glassy. You see, you will get what I mean by Redshift material is a multi-purpose material. Let's make it. I go to the refraction and increase the weight of the refraction. You see that it just quickly turns into glass. And I'm gonna change the color of that to white, and that one to white as well. And then I just want to make the roughness like very, and the reflectivity, yes. If there would be other objects behind this statue, you will see more of this, the glassiness. The IOR is on metal, still on metal, so I turn it into glass. IOR, this is very important. Index of reflection. And the index of reflection 1.5 is what materials reflection? It's water material reflection. It's good to just study about the IOR, or index of reflections, and index of refraction of different materials as well. So you see that when I add refraction, the IOR of the refraction says it is linked to reflection. So I just changed that to something that resembles the glass more. So you just can Google different material IOR index of refraction list. So okay, air is 1, aluminium is 1.3, 1.39, gold is 0.4. That's why our gold was not look like absolute gold, it was like fake gold, because they in this. So what is glass? What is glass? We just have to find it. Let me just, what's that? Yeah, flint glass, heavy flint glass. Glass is 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 is glass. But I want a very nice glass, like a heaviest 1.8. Yeah, let's do that one. So I just point 1 point. So this is like a heavy duty statue. Yes, that's what I want. So quickly, gold turned into glass. Still there's like some bit of orangey in it. It means it has made it murky and not clean. I go white, and I can even add a bit of bluish in it, so it makes it more expensive. Yes, that's cool. Okay, and let's change it to, so I'm gonna turn off the refraction. No refraction. No reflection. I have turned them all off, and white plain statue. Back to where we were. Let's go to the coating, and you can add different coating on your so you can add like a material on top that would behave as a coating, not not just as a like intrinsic material. Just like turn it off. You can, if you're just like looking for an overall opacity, so this is not a refraction, it's just overall opacity. It's, you know, it's not used very often, but you know, if you want such a thing like a ghost type of thing, it's there. Subsurface scattering. Okay, so let's make this look like a wax, or like something made of like candle. So this Buddha is a candle. I turn off the IPR because IPR doesn't like subsurface scattering, and I have to keep rendering properly. So right click here and rendering the camera. So I just add a lot of subsurface scattering, so like 5 or 1, and then the radius to like 5. Let's see how it works. This is the subsurface scattering attribute of the Redshift material, the all-purpose material. But for a proper subsurface scattering, what is subsurface scattering? It's the penetration of the light into the subject. If you just give me your cell phone, would you turn on the torch? There it is. So when I hold this light into my hand, the light gets into my hand and passes through. So, but it doesn't happen on this mouse. So the material of my skin lets the light to get into that. So for creating thank you so much, a realistic material of the skin, we use subsurface scattering. It means that the light gets into lower surfaces of the material. So that's why in the subsurface scattering you have like here is just one layer. Oh, basically we have like 3 layers, like very deep layer of the body and different layers. I just let me render one of them. When you don't want to render the whole frame, you can go to options and turn on auto render region, and just drag in a region that you want to render. If it doesn't work, I will start using Redshift skin material. Well, not bad. So maybe more like 8. Yeah, it's very like waxy. But what I do now is I just define different layers inside the wax. So yeah, it's kind of okay now. It's just like you see that the light is kind of like gets into it. So at the very core of this like candle-like statue, so let's say it's, what color it should be? You tell me. Let's say it's like purple. Thank you. Okay. It's purple in the very inside. In the very deep inside, it's purple. So the radius of the very inside is 1, or maybe more. So the radius scale of everything is maybe more. I don't know. And so that's the very deep layer. And then on top of that, it's somehow less purple. I just select the same color but make it like brighter. And on very top, it's yellowish. So let's see how it behaves if it gets rendered like that. Do render that. Yeah, you see that like a very. I think we have to increase that like. So if that's 8, so we go 8. That one. We go. For some reason Redshift is not that responsive today. Damn Redshift. I right click here, camera, render. Yeah, So you see that inside we will see like a bit of purplish color. So let's keep this color. Let's assign a dedicated subsurface scattering shader, which is Redshift Skin. So that's a shader that we use for skin and anything that needs the light to get into the lower surfaces. So we just keep that one. So I just go to the Redshift shaders surface and add a Redshift material, a skin here. And I call that, it's a good habit. You rename everything properly every time. Oh, what happened? I hate you, Maya. Okay, so I call that wax material. RS at the end, so we know that it's Redshift. And I middle click, drag and drop it on Buddha, and I render it for now. So you see that here we have proper shallow scatter, mid scatter, and deep scatter. And the overall scattering radius is 1. So let's see how it works. The scattering, the subsurface scattering and skin shader is very dependent to the object scaling. So sometimes object is so large, so it doesn't work. So then you have to increase the amount. So let's say we go the radius scale, like let's go 5. Overall scale 5 as well, and then render it again. We're getting there. Oh, so now I have to start scale up the radius inside the body. So you see that the deep scatter is like very weak. So I go like make it 8, and this one I make it 0.8, and that one maybe 0.2, and that one 0.1. Let's see how it works. Yes, so it's so skin-like now. So the very inside, the deep scatter, so we were saying that the deep scatter would be purple. Come on. Behave. The top one is like mid purplish, and the mid one, the top one would be like just white. Let's render that. Okay. Yes. Maybe even more. Like overall scale is like 10, 2 times more. Radial scale more, even more. Okay, so radius inside 1.2 maybe. Mid layer 0.4 or 5, 0.5, and shallow scatter 0.3. Let's see how it works. Oh, it's too much. But that's okay. You get some idea. So the deep inside is very strong. So I just make it like. Anyway, so that's the one with the Redshift material, and that's the one with the scheme material. So yes, you will understand it better if we close up, like we go closer to the statue. You will get a better idea of how would it look like. Oh, it's too much. Very. Okay, I might just step back and just 5. That one 4. Okay, so so I changed that to like 4, 5, 0.1, 0.3 and 0.7. It might be different for everyone depending on the scale of your statue. If you want to increase the quality of the rendering and remove those noises, you see that there's a lot of noises all around. Every single thing has a sampling. All the lights that you have added to your scene, they have their own sampling. All the shaders. But if you just want to do an override sampling of everything, you just go to your rendering editor, rendering settings, and inside output there is a sampling override here. So let's say we want to make all the lights, so all the lights at the moment are casting 16 ray of lights. So I just want to increase it to 128. So the lighting will be more accurate in terms of sampling, and the rendering speed will be lower. Okay, so I just save that one. So you see that some noises are here. I just like maybe I just super sample the subsurface scattering as well. So like go to like 64, rendering it. So there are some noises here and there. So hopefully we would be able to make those noises. Yeah, they're gone now. So you see that if we compare with noise, without. So yeah, the very default rendering settings in Redshift works very fine, but for enhancing it to a more detailed and more accurate rendering, just do not increase everything abruptly, just suddenly. Just do it very gently, step by step. Okay, so that was a very basic lighting and shading of Redshift. So take a break, and then we will talk about how to render in layers and in different paths.